back to my channel. Hi. So, I came to make this video to debunk Praegeru. This will be my first Praegeru debunking video, and it has to do the Michael Brown shooting. Crap. So, let's start, and let's get into debunking.
One of the most significant events of this century happened early afternoon of August 9, 2014. It took place in Ferguson, Missouri, a city on the outskirts of St. Louis. So embedded in the popular mind is this event that if you just say the name Ferguson, everyone knows what you're talking about: police brutality and racial injustice. President Barack Obama referred to it in a speech before the United Nations in September 2014. I know the world also took notice of the small American city of Ferguson, Missouri, where a young man was killed and a community was divided. So yes, we have our own racial and ethnic tensions. The president understated the case. The shooting in Ferguson led to nights of riots and gave fuel to a new social movement, Black Lives Matter. Given its historical importance, it would be useful then to make sure we have our facts straight. So, here's a quiz to test your knowledge. First question, true or false? A young unarmed black man, Michael Brown, 19, was killed by a white police officer, Darren Wilson.
Fucking true. So, later on, they will get to another part of their quizzes, so-called quizzes, and that's where the debunking will start. Next.
The answer is true. True or false? Wilson stopped Brown for no good reason. False.
This is where the debunking begins. So, as we look in Wikipedia, where they bring in the whole thing about what really happened in Ferguson. So, it says on August. So, here we're going to talk about basically the background of what happened. Next, we're going to go into the witness accounts that cooperate with Darren Wilson's story and Doreen Johnson's testimony. So, it says on August 9th, 2014, Michael Brown Jr., an 18-year-old black man, was fatally shot by a 28-year-old white Ferguson police officer, Darren Wilson, in the city of Ferguson, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis. Brown was accompanied by his 22-year-old friend, Doreen Johnson. Wilson said the altercation ensued when Brown attacked Wilson in his police vehicle, for control of Wilson's gun until it was fired. Johnson claimed that Wilson initiated the confrontation by grabbing Brown through the neck of his car window and threatening to shoot him. So keep that in mind. Next, let's get back to Praegeru.
Wilson, driving a police SUV, had just received a call on his radio that a local convenience store had been robbed. He saw two men walking in the middle of the nearby street who met the description of the store thieves. Wilson drove up to them. When he asked the two men to move to the sidewalk, one of the men, Michael Brown, refused. Officer Wilson then attempted to get out of his car, but Brown blocked the door, punching the officer through the open window. As Brown tried to grab Wilson's gun, a struggle ensued. Wilson managed to fire his gun, wounding Brown in the hand. True or false? Michael Brown.
So, next, that is false. Let's get to the finishing statements of what happened. At this point, both Wilson and Johnson state that Brown and Johnson fled, with Wilson pursuing Brown shortly thereafter. Wilson stated that Brown stopped and charged him after a short pursuit. Johnson contradicted this account, stating that Alright. So, Johnson contradicted his account, stating that Brown turned around with his hands up, raised after Wilson shot at his back. Never shot. We don't know. Okay, let's get to let's finish. I get my story mixed up. So, alright. According to Johnson, Wilson then shot Brown multiple times until Brown fell to the ground. In the entire altercation, Wilson fired 12 bullets, including twice during the struggle in the car. Shot Brown 2 times. The last was probably the fatal shot. Brown was struck 6 times, all the front of his body. The event ignited unrest and FBI subsequent investigation, saying that there was no evidence that Brown his hands up and surrendered or said, "Don't shoot." Before he was shot, however, protesters claimed he had done so and later used the slogan, "Hands up, don't shoot." Next, let's get to the testimonies, okay? And let's get to the incident. So, it starts at 11:47 a.m. Okay. Get a snack, because I'm going to be going through a journey. So it says at 11 a.m. 11:47 a.m. Wilson responded to a call about a baby with breathing problems and drove to Glenmark Drive east to Canfield Drive. And about 3 minutes later, and several blocks away, Brown was recorded on camera stealing a box of Swisser's Sweet cigars and forcefully shoved Ferguson market clerk. Brown and his friend Dwayne Johnson were wearing a t-shirt running. I don't know how to pronounce that word. The suspect was reported to have stolen a box of Swisser's cigars at 11:57. The dispatch described the suspect as what was back in service, radioed into was wearing a red St. Louis Cardinals hat, a white t-shirt and yellow socks and khaki shorts, and he was accompanied by another male. At 12 p.m., Wilson reported suspects has disappeared. Wilson called for backup at 12:02, saying, "Put me on Cardinal with two, and send me in our car." Intentionally, reports of what happened next differ widely among sources and witnesses, particularly regarding whether Brown was coming towards Wilson when the shots were actually fired at noon on August 9th. On August 9th, Wilson drove up to Brown and Johnson as they were in the middle of walking into Canfield Drive in order for them to move off the streets. Wilson continued driving past the two men, but then backed up and stopped and closed up to them. A struggle took place between Brown and Wilson after a former reached the window of the police SUV, a Charlotte, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Wilson was armed with a pistol. I'm going to say pistol is the whole name of the gun, which was fired twice during the car. Wilson got out of the vehicle. Brown pursued Brown. Yeah, he pursued Brown. At some point, Wilson fired his gun again while facing Brown and hit him at least 6 shots. Brown was unarmed and died on the street. Less than 90 seconds passed from the time Wilson encountered Brown to the time of Brown's death. An unidentified officer arrived on the scene 73 seconds after Wilson called, whereas a second suspect with 31 seconds later, a supervisor was requested by Unit 25 at 12:07 p.m. and an officer on the scene radioed to dispatch for more units. Also at 12:07, St. Louis County Police were notified. The county officers began arriving on the scene. In around 12:15, St. Louis County detectives were notified at 12:43 and arrived at 1 p.m. with forensic investigators. So let's get to the cops. Okay. So, Wilson gave his account with a detective on August 10th. In his testimony before a grand jury, Wilson said he just left a call, a sick person, when he heard on the radio that there was a theft in progress in a local convenience store. Wilson heard the descriptions of the suspects soon after, 2 black males walking down the middle of the street. Wilson pulled up to them and told them to walk on the sidewalk, and Johnson replied, "We're almost at our destination," as they passed his window. Brown said, "Fuck, what you say?" Said, "Fuck what you have to say." Wilson backed up 10 feet to where they were attempted to open his door. After backing up, Wilson told the 2 to come here. Brown told him repeatedly, "What the fuck are you going to do?" Wilson shut the door, and Brown approached him and opened his door again and tried to push him back while telling him to get back. Brown started swinging, punching me from outside my vehicle. Brown had his body against the door, and Wilson was the first strike. Brown was glancing below. At that point, he was trying to get Brown's arms out of his face. This was when Brown turned to his left hand and did Johnson with several packs of stolen cigars he had been holding. Wilson then grabbed Brown's right arm to get control, but Brown hit him in the face. Wilson said felt like a 5-year-old holding a Hulk Hogan while attempting to restrain Brown. When he reached the police car window, Wilson jeered back and he yelled at Brown numerous times to stop and get back. Wilson said though about using his mace and the bat, and he was unable to reach them either. He drew his weapon at a point at Brown, told him to stop or he would shoot him while ordering him on the ground. According to Wilson, Brown then said, "You're too much of a fucking pussy to shoot me," and grabbed his gun and twisted it, pointing at him to the hip area. Wilson placed his left hand, Brown, and his other hand on the gun and pushed forward with both of his arms. The gun was lined up with Brown, and Wilson pulled the trigger at his weapon and failed to discharge. In the next try, the gun fired, and Brown then attempted to hit him up multiple times inside the vehicle. Wilson at the shot Brown again, but missed, and took off running east while Wilson exited his vehicle and radioed for backup. Wilson followed Brown, yelling for him to stop and get on the ground, but he kept running. Eventually, Brown stopped and turned around and grunting noise and started running at him with his hand under his t-shirt waistband. Brown ignored Wilson's commands to stop and get on the ground. So Wilson fired multiple shots and paused and yelled at him to get on the ground again, but Brown was still charging at him and had not slowed down. Wilson fired another set of shots, but Brown was still running at him. And then when Brown was about 8 to 10 feet, Wilson fired more shots, and one of those hitting Brown in the head, which brought him down to his hands in his waistband. Wilson, 2 patrol cars showed up approximately 20 seconds after the final shot. With supervisors arrived, he was sent up to the police station, and Wilson told detectives he has reached his right-hand waistband and still appeared his waistband after Brown was shot. The medical investigators at the scene said the shooting did not take any photographs and testified to the grand jury. The left hand was under his dead body after the waistband, and the right hand was extended towards. On November 26, Wilson gave his first public interview on the shooting on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos. So, now, let's get to Doran Johnson. But before we do that, let's finish off with Praegeru and their lies. Okay.
Brown's back was turned to Officer Wilson when he was shot and killed. False.
No, that was actually true. He was running away. So, next, let's get to his testimony. Because his testimony is really important on this part. So, sorry if it's blurry. Johnson, a friend of Brown who was with him that day, gave his account of the incident to media outlets in August. In media interviews, Johnson said Wilson pulled up beside them and said, "Get the fuck on the sidewalk." The young man replied when they were not but a minute away from their destination that they would shortly be out of the street. Wilson drove forward without saying anything further and abruptly backed up, positioning his vehicle crosswise to their path. Wilson tried to open his door aggressively, and the door ricocheted, I think it was, off both of their bodies and closed back on Wilson. Wilson, still in his vehicle, grabbed Brown around his neck, though the open window, and Brown tried to pull away, but Wilson continued to pull Brown towards him like a tug of war. Johnson said Brown did not reach for the officer's weapon at all. So, what Praegeru said, you heard what Praegeru said, that he tried to go for his gun, when that is not true. His testimony says he did not try to grab his gun at all. So that is bullshit. Next, let's finish off with this. Okay. Johnson said, okay, and was attempting to get free. Wilson drew his weapon. Let me get to. Wait, let me move this. Attempted to get free. When Wilson drew his weapon and said, "I will shoot you," or "I'm going to shoot," and fired his weapon, hitting Brown. Let me see. Following the initial gunshots, Brown freed himself, and two fled. Wilson exited his vehicle and fired several rounds at the fleeing Brown, hitting him once in the back. Brown turned around with his hands raised and said, "I don't have a gun. Stop shooting." Wilson then shot Brown several more times, killing him. So, Praegeru, you're full of shit. In his testimony, September to the grand jury, Johnson said he and Brown had walked to the convenience store to buy cigars. I can't pronounce that word, but I'm just going to say cigars. Brown instead reached over the counter and took them and shot of the clerk on his way out the door. Johnson testified that they walked back home. Brown had cigars in his hands in plain sight, and two hands in plain sight, and the two Ferguson police cars passed them, but didn't stop. When Wilson encountered them, he told the two to get the fuck on the sidewalk, and Johnson told him that they would be off the street shortly as they were getting close to their destination. Johnson testified Wilson was the aggressor from the beginning, and that for no apparent reason, he backed his vehicle and tried to open his door, but Brown shut it, preventing him from getting out. Johnson said Wilson then reached and grabbed Brown by the neck, and two engaged in a tug of war, and Wilson said, "I will shoot." Johnson said he never saw Brown hit Wilson and did not think Brown grabbed for Wilson's gun. But that shot was fired at the point. Johnson then said they both ran. Wilson fired while Brown was running away. Brown turned around at the Big Mike's, hands was up, but not so much in the air, because he had been struck. Johnson told the jurors, "Brown, I said, I don't have a gun," was mad and tired to say it again, "I don't have a gun." But before he could say his second sentence, or before he can even get it out, when several more shots came. In his testimony, Johnson maintained Brown did not run at Wilson prior to the fatal shots. So, Praegeru lies to you. Again, how can somebody who's already been fucking injured in the back charge at you like that?
After being shot in the hand, Brown ran away from the police car. Wilson got out of the vehicle and pursued.
Wait, I think it's loading.
Brown then suddenly turned and charged Officer Wilson. Here's how one witness whose testimony closely fits the forensic evidence described the scene. Brown ran towards the officer full charge. The officer fired several shots at him, and Mike Brown continuously came forward in the charging motion. And when he stopped, that's when the officer ceased fire. When he charged once more, the officer returned fire with, I would say, 3 to 4 shots. And that's when Mike Brown finally collapsed. The Brown family's own medical expert, respected pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, also conceded this point. The wounds Brown suffered were consistent with Brown charging toward Wilson, not running away.
Now, let's see the actual forensic evidence. Because I say you guys should read the article. So, let's see, where is it? I'm looking for the autopsy. And there was witness accounts, but we'll get to that later. Autopsies. 3 autopsies were performed on Brown's body. All 3 noting Brown had been shot at least 6 times, including twice in the head. He received no shots in his back. The county autopsy reported gunshot entry and exit wounds to the right of his arm and both in the front of the ventral palms facing forward and dorsal palms facing backwards. So, let's get to the part of the autopsy. And there's more. So it says the DNA. Let me see. What else? There was also evidence. So the DNA. Brown's DNA was found on his gun. His DNA was also found on the left thigh of Wilson's pants. On the side of the driver's door handle, Wilson's police SUV resulted of Brown's spilled blood staining Wilson's pants and the door handle. Wilson's DNA was found on Brown's left palm, but was not found under Brown's fingernails or his right hand. Michael Graham, St. Louis medical examiner, said the blood was found on Wilson's gun, the inside of the car, and tissue from Brown was found in the exterior of the driver's side of Wilson's vehicle. This evidence was consistent with the struggle at the location, according to Judy Meeklin of the San Francisco Paleontology, who commented on the case as an expert of the official autopsy, which Brown's hand had foreign matter consistency of a gun discharge on it, supported Wilson's testimony that Brown was reaching for the weapon, or indicating the gun was inches away from Brown's hand and went off. According to the detective who performed the test on the gun, he had decided whether to perform a DNA test or a dust of fingerprints. Because only one test can be performed without affecting the other, he had found the gun stored in an unsealed envelope, contrary to a customary evidence handling protocol. Documents released after Here the grand jury proceeded to show Wilson washed blood from his hands and chucked his own gun into the bag of evidence, both actions described by media outlets as unorthodox procedures for such a case. Facts. So, Praegeru, they're literally showing that they're full of shit on this case. Next, let's get to more of their bullshit.
True or false? Before Michael Brown was shot and killed, he raised his hands above his head and shouted, "Hands up, don't shoot."
True.
False.
You're full of shit.
Federal investigators from the Department of Justice found no credible evidence that Brown ever raised his hands in a don't shoot gesture or in any way heeded the officer's commands for him to surrender. The federal report concluded that witnesses who originally stated Brown had his hands up in surrender recanted their original accounts, admitting that they did not witness the shooting or parts of it. Investigators also concluded Brown never uttered the now iconic phrase. Again from the report, the media has widely reported that there is witness testimony that Brown said, "Don't shoot," as he held his hands above his head. In fact, our investigation did not reveal any eyewitness who stated that Brown said, "Don't shoot." Where did this phrase come from then? The best guess is that it was made up by Brown's companion, Dorian Johnson, immediately after the shooting. Witnesses described him saying, "The police shot my friend and his hands were up." And like a game of telephone, the phrase spread quickly throughout the neighborhood, morphing into "hands up, don't shoot." Picked up and amplified by the media, it then became an anthem for activists. True or false? A local grand jury investigation and a federal investigation both concluded
True.
that Officer Wilson was justified in his use of force. True. The local grand jury and the federal investigation, supervised by Attorney General Eric Holder, reached the same conclusion. Officer Wilson did nothing wrong. There was no basis on which to prosecute him. Here's how Heather McDonald of the Manhattan Institute put it in her book, The War on Cops. It was not a question of evidence not supporting high-threshold civil rights charges. It was a question of evidence eviscerating virtually every aspect of the pro-Brown, anti-Wilson narrative. There's another way to put this. The statement that an innocent black man was killed by a racist cop in Ferguson, Missouri, is a lie. Those who say otherwise are either willfully deceiving you for their own purposes or are wholly ignorant of the facts.
You're the one who's ignorant of the actual fucking facts. So, yeah, the DOJ said that fucking shit. And let's see how they fucking handled the thing. Let's see how